The following podcast is taken from a live broadcast on Inspire FM.
Hello and assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome back to another show, dear listeners. It's the Ask Your Lawyer show at Inspire FM. Today you're joined by myself, Mujeeb, Rehman, who will be hosting you, and your guest, Mr. Anwar, Qazi, and we're both solicitors of .com Solicitors Limited. So today our topic, Mr. Anwar, what is our topic today?
Well, wa alaikum assalam, our listeners. Previously we discussed about eviction, and
disrepair,
then we went on about
possession.
We discussed about disrepair. So today I intend to talk about homelessness.
Okay, so today you intend to talk about homelessness. Now, would you mind giving a brief definition in ordinary language, not with any legislation or anything? What do you mean by the term homelessness?
I understand, Mujeeb. Yeah, before I go into this topic, is a complex area of law and very extended. So what I had in mind, that we will have further discussions on matters concerning homelessness. But today we will just give an overview.
Okay, just to give the listeners
overview rules and legislation about homelessness, and then we will go in our future shows. We will go more specific, and having said that, actually, I'll strongly urge our listeners that if they have any housing issues, or if they are faced with homelessness or threatened with homelessness, is first to contact their local authorities as soon as possible, and then if they require further assistance, they are in disputes with the local authorities, I'll very strongly advise them to contact housing solicitors, and even having said that, I'll go a little bit further, that if they have any questions about any topic in housing, they can call Inspire FM live right now, or they can leave a message, their numbers, and we will revert their calls, return their calls, and try to advise them appropriately. So and I'll go a little bit further. As housing solicitors, or as solicitors, is our job and duty to assist people, and as we're talking about housing, so it's our job. Right. If they have any legal issues with the local authorities, they do need to contact us, and we'll try to resolve the issue. Okay,
so just the basic synopsis of what you've just said. So today you've chose a topic to speak about as homelessness, and what you're going to do, you're just going to give a slight overview and go through some legislations and regulations pertaining to homelessness. And you've also said that it's not going to be the only segment on homelessness, because you're saying it's a very vast and extended topic and area of law. So it's going to require a couple of shows to cover everything, and you will further discuss everything as well. Thank you, Mr. Qazi, for that. And just to give a brief overview and a brief summary of what we mean by homelessness is if somebody has not got a place to live in, they've got no fixed abode, and they're sofa surfing, or they're out on the streets, anything like that, you're considered homelessness. You're considered homeless, and that falls under homelessness. And you also advise that, look, if any of you do fall victim to such a thing, then please contact your local borough council. The council, obviously, that owes you a duty. Do not think every council owes you a duty, just to put that out there. Not every council owes us all a duty. It's just the borough that you live in. Get into contact with them, inform them you're homeless. If they're not helping you, assisting you accordingly, obviously you're going to expand on what we mean by that as the show continues. To get into contact with the studio, leave a message or get into contact with any housing solicitor, and they'll revert back to you. And you said we're happy to help them. Right?
Absolutely right. Yeah. Having said that, the word homelessness, although I really have in mind to explain this in our future show, as I said, we will go more
into depth,
talk more specifically. Yeah. There are occasions where you can't have a roof over your head, but still you will be deemed as a homeless person in law, actually. And going further, this overview provides a summary of the homelessness legislation, the duties, powers, the obligations on housing authorities and others towards people who are homeless or at risk of homelessness.
Okay. So, Mr. Qazi, you're saying that we're going to talk about legislations pertaining homelessness. What is the primary legislation that one should look at, or what is the primary legislation that can be found?
Yeah, that's right. The homelessness legislation, or the primary legislation, homelessness legislation, can be found in Part 7 of the Housing Act 1996. Actually, Part 7 of this particular act deals mainly with homelessness. And
what does the provision actually, in summary, imply?
This particular act, or this part of the act, provides statutory duties, legal duties to prevent homelessness, and also to provide assistance to people threatened with or actually homeless. And when I say it provides statutory duties to prevent homelessness or provide assistance, we're referring to Section 175 of the Housing Act 1996.
Okay. Have there been any further amendments to this, or have there been any expansions upon this?
That's right, actually. The government has been working together with the local authorities to introduce. The government has worked to introduce more legislation. In 2002, the government brought further amended legislations, which through the Homelessness Act 2002, and then we had the Homelessness Priority Need for Accommodation England Order 2002. And the purpose of these new legislations were to ensure a more wider approach to tackle terrorism, to tackle and prevent homelessness. Right. In particular, by requiring a homelessness strategy for every housing authority.
Okay.
And then by regulating the assistance available to people who are homeless or threatened with homelessness, by extending the priority need categories to homeless 16 and 17 years old. And also brought further protection for care leavers age 18, and 19 and 20, or people who are vulnerable as a result of time spent in care. And also they have brought further sections to assist people in armed forces, people in prison, people in custody, and people who are vulnerable because they have fled their home because of violence.
Right.
It can be domestic violence or any
kind of violence.
Exactly.
Right. So, thank you, Anwar. Just to sum up what you've just said, correct me if I'm wrong and feel free to add on. You basically said that the government brought forth legislation through the Homelessness Act 2002 and the Homelessness Priority Need for Accommodation Order in 2002 also. And this is to ensure a wider approach in tackling and preventing homelessness, as it was on an increase at that point, for those who know. In particular, by requiring a homelessness strategy for every housing authority or borough or district, as you want to, however way you wish to portray it. And it came around to regulate the assistance and to be available to people who are homeless or threatened with being homeless by extending the priority need categories to homelessness for 16-year-olds, 17-year-olds, care leavers that at the age of 18, 19 and 20. By care leavers, just for the record, we mean people or young people that have been taken away from the particular family home due to whatever reason, put into a situation of care. It could be supported accommodation, semi-independent, or it could be a foster care home. We're not going to endeavour too much onto that. And for those who have spent time in the armed forces, prisons, people who are vulnerable because of domestic violence or any kind of violence for that. It could be gang-related violence, different kinds of violences. It's all covered within that bracket of violence.
Absolutely right, absolutely. Providing much, placing more duties and obligations on councils for people that we mentioned.
To provide a duty of care, yes.
Exactly.
But a lot of the listeners have probably read up about homelessness because, as we know, as lawyers, it was enacted again, the Homelessness Act of 2017. I'm just trying to go in chronological order, going upwards. So, would you like to say anything about the Homelessness Act?
Well, before even I go there, actually, most of the clients that we met in the past, they always mix two areas of law. We have housing laws, and then we have benefit issues. And those benefit issues mostly come under welfare. Welfare benefit, that's a separate area of law. Most housing solicitors do deal with welfare benefit issue. And I'll give you an example. Most people come say, I'm having housing problem, and when you take instructions from them, you find out that they're having some kind of housing problem or housing benefit problem or council tax issues and things like that. So there's separate area of law. Coming to your question, yes, in 2017 another act came into force. Is the Homeless Reduction Act 2017. And this act significantly reformed England's homelessness legislation by placing duties on local authorities to intervene at much earlier stages to prevent homelessness in their areas. In addition to that, it also requires housing authorities to provide homelessness services to all those affected, not just those who have priority need.
And what type of people does this include?
Yeah, these include an enhanced prevention duty extending the period a household is threatened with homelessness from 28 days to 56 days.
Right.
Before, if you are faced with homelessness, councils would have intervened if they come to a conclusion that you are going to be homeless within 28 days. So this particular legislation extend that period to 56 days. And also in this piece of legislation, we have a new duty for those who are already homeless, so that housing authorities will support households for 56 days to relieve their homelessness by helping them to secure a suitable accommodation.
Right, okay. Thank you for touching upon the Homelessness Reduction Act 2017 and all. So in a nutshell, you've basically said the act was enacted to reduce and reform England's homelessness legislation by placing further duties, shall I say, on local authorities to intervene at a much earlier stage. And they've given a time bracket of 28 to 56 days and to come in. And what this, in simple terms, you're trying to say, what this means is that housing authorities are required to work with people to prevent homelessness at an earlier stage. And it imposes a new duty upon them to ensure that those that are already homeless, the authorities support them for a period of 56 days, help them secure a further accommodation in order for them not to be homeless at all. Is that correct?
That's right, yeah. So if you look at it, technically, if you look into this legislation, the legislation is placing more obligations, more duties, or giving more instructions to councils or to local authorities to intervene at much earlier stage, so that those people would faced with homelessness or threatened with homelessness secure a suitable accommodation.
Thank you, Mr. Qazi. I mean, you did mention there about the coming up with reviews and strategies. I understand briefly what you mean. I'm sure we all know with every act and with every piece of legislation, there's always reviews and strategies as to why they've come around, or what they intend to do with them, or how they expect them to review things or reform the situation at hand. Now, what was the review and strategy for this, Mr. Qazi?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Thank you for the question, Mr. Mujeeb. Before I even answer your question, you see, in these shows, I really have intention to have more shows on homelessness. I really want to go more specific about homelessness. Today's show is just an overview, general, idea about homelessness legislations and all those new legislations that came into force. And the Homelessness Act 2002, all housing authorities must have in place a homelessness strategy based on a review of all forms of homelessness in their district. The strategy must be renewed at least every 5 years. And then the Social Services Authority must provide reasonable assistance.
Right.
And then I'll go a little bit further. The strategy must set out the authority's plan, an overall plan or plan for the prevention of homelessness and for securing that sufficient accommodation and support or will be available for people who become homeless or who are at risk of becoming so.
Okay.
Basically, in
simple terms.
In other words, councils needs to build more houses, and also having more rules and regulations to make sure that people who are threatened, who are homeless or threatened with homelessness, are provided suitable accommodations.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Qazi. So basically, just to wrap your answer up, you basically said housing authorities and local authorities have to come up with some kind of strategy and take relevant action, work with the Social Services Authority, expand what they need to do in order to prevent homelessness in their district or the local area or the borough, and to secure a sufficient accommodation for those who are at risk of being homeless, or those who have fallen into being homeless. Now you suggested that, I mean, a lot of the local people in Luton probably are aware by driving around in certain parts of Luton that Luton Borough Council have put up a lot of new accommodations, built a few new block of flats, etc., etc. And again, I'm talking about first-hand experience. I know somebody that was homeless that got situated in one of them flats. You're saying that's one of the strategies that local boroughs have introduced in order to prevent homelessness in their borough. And you're saying that this strategy needs to be looked over and renewed and enhanced in every 5 years. Is that correct?
That's right. Yeah, that's absolutely right. Having said that, we keep repeating ourselves. The government brought new legislation. Our listeners should really understand this. It's about separation of power. The government introduces legislations, and then the parliament scrutinize their process. The parliament passes legislation, and then the judge's duties to interpret, or the court's duty to interpret the law.
Yes.
It doesn't mean that the government just make legislation and hand it over to the councils. So there are special procedure for these legislation, and then within these legislation or acts, then some powers are given to local authorities to introduce their own rules,
certain duties,
rules and regulations.
Right.
So we should really bear that in mind.
Yes,
and yes, whatever you repeated, that was the.
Thank you, Mr. Qazi. Those of you just tuned in, Assalamu alaikum once again, and welcome to the Ask Your Lawyer show. Thank you for tuning in. I'm your host, Mujeeb Rehman of .com Solicitors, and today I have my guest who's talking about the topic of homelessness, and my guest is Mr. Anwar Qazi, also of .com Solicitors Limited. So, Mr. Qazi, I mentioned a term duty. Now, according to the Homelessness Act or certain legislation, what does the duty refer to?
That's right. Even before I answer this question, I really want to talk about another topic. It's quite general. It's about solicitors. You see, and the reason I said that, I just want to repeat myself to solicitors, that if you have any housing issues, if you require any legal assistance in relation to your housing matter, do contact the solicitors. Do contact us or contact Inspire FM. It's our job to assist you, and also to act in your best interest. Not just assist yourself and your family members. And we are under strict code of conduct by a regulatory body, by Solicitors Regulation Authority, and there are new code of conduct are coming into force from the 25th of November, placing much more obligations on us that we maintain that trust the public places on us. Duty to refer the Homelessness Reduction Act 2017, quite recent, not that long, introduced a duty on certain public authorities to refer service users who they think may be homeless or threatened with homeless to a housing authority. The service user must give consent. The word consent, we will talk about it at our later shows. It does have a meaning here, and can choose which authority to be referred to. The housing authority should incorporate the duty to refer into their homelessness strategy and establish effective partnerships and working arrangements with agencies to appropriate referrals. We will talk about this particular duty to refer topic much more specific. It's a little bit more important than about referring we have service to user. Expand this topic, which we will do so.
Thank you, Mr. Qazi. So you said the Homelessness Reduction Act introduced duties on certain public authorities to refer the service users who they think are homeless to or threatened with homelessness to a housing authority. Now, by housing authority, it could be your local council, it could be an agent working on behalf of the local council, like, for example, Sanctuary Homes, auction housing, etc., etc. The housing authority should incorporate a duty to refer into the homelessness strategy, and they should establish effective partnerships with certain housing providers, like I named a couple, to maintain that individuals in their borough are housed and accommodated appropriately, or in their district. Is that correct in saying
that's
that?
That's right, Mr.
Okay, so from that, now I'm thinking, is there a duty upon anyone or upon the housing authority to provide an advisory service? However, before you answer that question, Mr. Qazi, we've literally got 2 minutes till break, so I don't want to start a new topic and then cut you off and then get you to start again. So do you want to just do a little sum up from where we've started?
Yeah, as I said before, the primary legislation, homelessness legislation, can be found in Part 7 of the Housing Act 1996. The Act provides statutory duties and obligation to prevent homelessness and to provide assistance to people threatened or actually homeless, or actually those people who are homeless. And then I said there was, I just said earlier on, in 2002, the government brought further amended legislation, the Homelessness Act 2002, and then the Homelessness Priority Need for Accommodation England Order 2002, to ensure more wider approach to tackling terrorism, to tackle homelessness. I'm sorry for that. And then regulating the assistance available to people who are homeless or threatened with homelessness by extending the priority need categories to different other people. And then we have the Homelessness Reduction Act 2017 significantly reform England's homelessness legislation by placing more duties on local authorities to prevent homelessness.
So that's just a brief synopsis of what has literally happened. So inshallah, dear listeners, we're gonna break. We're gonna go off for a break, and we shall be back with you shortly. And stay tuned. And there's more coming to the show. We've got another load of information that Mr. Qazi wants to share with you. So Assalamu alaikum. Enjoy the break.
You're listening to an Inspire FM podcast, making available our popular programs from our daily broadcast on Inspire FM.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome back, dear listeners. Welcome back to the Ask Your Leader show at Inspire FM at 105.1 FM. I'm your host, Mr. Mujeeb Rehman of .com Solicitors, and I'm joined by my guest today, Mr. Anwar Qazi, also of .com Solicitors Limited, and our topic today is of homelessness. For those of you that have just tuned in, just a quick recap. We spoke about what homelessness is. We gave you a simple definition that homelessness, or person that's homeless, basically means those without a fixed abode. The person doesn't literally need to be on the streets, but just to simplify things, somebody who's on the streets or is sofa surfing, or has just somebody with no fixed abode, in simple terms. We said that where is the primary legislation for homelessness found? Mr. Qazi explained that that's going to be the Part 7 of the Housing Act 1996. The Act provides statutory duties to prevent homelessness and provides assistance to people that are threatened with homelessness. Section 1.7 of the same Act also provides the same. In 2002, the government brought further and amended legislations through the Housing Act 2002 and the Homelessness Priority and Accommodation Prevention Order 2002, and ensure that which was there just to ensure that a more wider approach is used to tackle and prevent homelessness, in particular by requiring homelessness strategies for every housing authority or local district or borough. And it's there to regulate and assist people who are homeless and threatened with homelessness. And it's been extended to give priority needs to more categories, such as people that are 16, 17 years old, those that are care leavers between the ages of 18 and 20, people who are vulnerable as a result of time that they've spent in care, people that have just left the armed forces, people that have just come out of prison or custody, and people who are just generally vulnerable because they've been involved in any kind of violence. It could be domestic violence, any other kind of violence as well. And we also spoke about the Homeless Reduction Act 2017, and we just said this brought significant reforms into England's homelessness regulations by placing duties on local authorities to come up with strategies and reviews in how they're going to tackle the issue of homelessness. And we spoke about the homelessness reviews and strategies, and Mr. Qazi mentioned that in accordance with the Homelessness Act 2002, that the local authorities and boroughs are now obliged to come up with strategies and work in partnerships with different boroughs and different authorities or housing associations in order to prevent homelessness and make sure that those individuals that are owed a duty by the local borough or the particular borough are housed in a suited and adequate accommodation for their needs. And we spoke about duty and what do we mean by duty, and Mr. Qazi also mentioned that this is provided in the Homelessness Reduction Act 2017, and it introduces a duty on public authorities to work with relevant people and authorities and the social services authority to ensure that everybody in the borough is housed adequately and the homelessness is reduced within any given borough. Now, we also said that we spoke about providing advice just before the break, and I asked you, is there a duty on anyone to provide because I know as a solicitor, we are under duty of care towards those that come to us for a consultation, or our clients, to provide them an advisory service or consultation, as we call it in our profession, whereby we go over the current situation and explain things to them in a legal term from a point of law of how things should be conducted or what should be done. Now, is there any duty to provide advisory service apart from that?
Yeah, that's right. We as solicitors, we act on instructions from our client, and upon obtaining instructions, we owe certain duties to act in their best interest, and also to achieve the outcome they desire they have instructed us. Having said that, the housing authorities has a duty to provide advice and information about homelessness and the prevention of homelessness and also the rights of homeless people or those at risk of homelessness, as well as the help that's available from housing authorities and others, and how to access those that help. The service should be designed with certain listed vulnerable groups in mind, and authorities can provide it themselves or arrange it for other agencies to do it on their behalf. Yes, there is a legal duty on local authorities to provide advisory services to all people who approach them for assistance, and
help.
This duty goes on to people who are even found intentionally homeless.
Right.
So that advisory duty is mentioned in the Act, to assist people who approach them.
Okay, Mr. Qazi. Thank you. You just mentioned a term there, intentionally homeless. Now, I know we're not meant to cover this right now, but because you've mentioned it, I don't want the listeners to think, okay, what do they mean by intentionally homeless? Somebody will be homeless intentionally. Can you just give us a little one-line sentence or whatever you want in what you mean by intentionally homeless?
Yeah, there are so many cases on this matter. Intentionally homeless where applicants have deliberately or recklessly done something. And an example I'll give you
not paying rent.
Yeah, rent arrears.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. This is just that I wanted the listeners to be on the same track as you. So there is a duty by the housing authorities and local authorities to provide a duty towards those that are homeless and those that are living under their duty, that advice is available, whether it's internally within the authority itself or provide an external provider who will provide them this information. As in, I'm just talking about from my experience, our work, where we work, we deal with Haringey Council a lot, and Haringey Council have many offshoots such as Homes for Haringey that provide advice. They've got the local Haringey Citizens Advice Bureaus. A lot of my clients come in and they say, yeah, the council told us to go there first, then we got redirected towards you, etc. So just to give you a synopsis, that advice service can be provided as long as they point you to the right direction and they've got some kind of sub-shoot or sub-office or department that's dealing with such things. Now, I know we've spoke briefly a lot about homelessness and, well, not a lot, but we've briefly covered this, what it means, what the duties refer to, who owes who a duty, how does it work. You've also mentioned intentionally homeless. We covered what we mean by intentionally homeless. Somebody by their own recklessness or by naivety, I just want to frame it in a nice way, has become homeless because, i.e., they couldn't afford to pay their rent. They didn't pay their rent. They fell into rent arrears, which resulted in them being evicted from the property that they were in. Now, Mr. Qazi, are there any applications and inquiries that one should make once they've been made homeless?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, councils do provide advisory services, whereas we solicitors, we provide legal services, to all those applicants. So as soon as an application for homelessness is made to a local authority, then housing authorities must give proper consideration to all applications for housing assistance.
Okay, just to stop you there, Mr. Qazi, you said the homelessness application, yeah?
That's right. Yeah.
Now, those that aren't aware, okay? I know it's a very brief and simple question which requires a 2-word answer probably. How and where do they find this application?
That's right.
Majority of the time.
So the first, my advice would be to people who are threatened with homelessness to approach the council first. That's the most important thing. Applications can be made online. Applications can be made at the council offices. There are different ways that people can make applications for homelessness. We will discuss about this. I think we don't need to discuss that much about making an application. So I'm
just saying, where is this application found?
Exactly.
Is it found
some
online?
Councils, some authorities have applications online where you can go and make an application there, or alternatively, you can approach the council and make the application
just
there and then.
Retrieve it from the help desk and take it away.
Help desk, sometimes it's not written, it's not a designed application. They can go and book an appointment and see a housing officer who can assist them with that application.
Right.
Basically, the housing officers will take all the information from you, and then the inquiries will start from there.
Okay, thank you. Carry on, sorry.
So as I said before, housing authorities must give proper consideration to all applications for housing assistance, and if they have reason to believe that an applicant may be homeless or threatened with homelessness. And there's the word reason to believe that requires much more consideration that we will discuss in our future show. Believe that applicant may be homeless or threatened with homelessness, they must make inquiries to see whether they owe them any duty. Under Part 7 of the 1996 Act, that's Homelessness Act 1996. The assessment process is important in enabling housing authorities to identify the assistance which an applicant may need, either to prevent them from becoming homeless or to help them to find another home. In each case, the authority will need first to decide whether the applicant is eligible for assistance and threatened with or actually homeless. That's the most important element or elements of an application. Certain applicants who are persons from abroad, for example, or let's say people with restrictions on their immigration status are not eligible for any assistance under Part 7 except free advice. Let's not deter these people if they're faced with homelessness or they're threatened with homelessness, even if they have restriction on their on recourses to public funds. They can still seek free advice and information about homelessness and the prevention of homelessness from the local authorities.
Okay, so you said obviously the homelessness application you spoke about, it could be done in various ways. Some authorities have them online. Sometimes you could just walk in and they'll give you an application form at the inquiries desk. Sometimes you have to arrange your appointment to go in and make this application. So the housing authorities and the local authorities are under an obligation to give a proper consideration to all applications that they receive. And if they have a reason to believe that the applicant is homeless or threatened with homelessness, they have to make inquiries to see whether they owe them a duty under Part 7 of the 1996 Act. The assessment process is important in enabling housing authorities to identify whether they could assist somebody or not. And sometimes people are affected due to their immigration status or what have you. They might have immigration issues or whatever. However, these people are still entitled to free advice and information pertaining homelessness and how to prevent homelessness. Just to give a brief of that. Okay, Mr. Anwar. So that being said, what if a person is threatened with homelessness or is likely to be homeless?
You ask earlier on what is homelessness, or when a person becomes homeless. Broadly speaking, a person is threatened with homelessness if they're likely to become homeless within 56 days.
All right.
For example, an applicant who has been served with a valid notice under Section 21 of the Housing Act 1998 to end their short-hold tenancy is also threatened with homelessness if the notice has expired or will expire within 56 days and is served in respect of the only accommodation that is available for them to occupy.
So if somebody is evicted with the Section 21 notice, they're considered homeless if the notice has expired or is going to expire within 56 days, right?
That's right. Yeah, we discussed about Section 21 notice. If you're served with a Section 21, generally Section 21 notice give tenants 21 days. Sorry, 2 months.
60 days.
Yeah, that's right. So as soon as I will advise our listeners that if you're served with a Section 21 notice, the best option is to approach the council as soon as receiving that notice.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Anwar. Will the council or the housing authorities set up assessments or any personalised housing plans for the individuals or the families? Will they do anything like that?
Yeah, that's right. Before even I go that, actually, I forget another point. An applicant is to be considered homeless if they do not have accommodation that they have a legal right to occupy. This is defined in the law, which is accessible and physically available to them and their household or their family members, and which it would be reasonable for them to continue to live in. In regards to assessment and personalized housing plans, housing authorities have a duty to carry out an assessment in all cases where an eligible applicant is homeless or threatened with homelessness. This process will identify what has caused the homelessness or the threat of homelessness, the housing needs of the applicant, any support they need in order to be able to secure and retain the current accommodations that they are occupying. And then following this assessment, the housing authority must work with that person to develop a personalized housing plan, which will include actions or reasonable steps to be taken by the local authority and by the applicants themselves to try and prevent
and relieve them
and relieve homelessness. Yeah.
Okay, so assessments and personalised housing plans will be set up by the housing authorities and the local authorities. They'll make relevant inquiries for eligible applicants who are homeless. Again, you mentioned just before you answered my question that the person that will be considered homeless is somebody that hasn't got accommodation or doesn't have a legal right to occupy any accommodation. So they'll sum up the person's housing needs and they'll provide any support in order for them to secure or retain their accommodation. And following the assessment, the housing authorities will work with the person to develop a personalised development plan for housing, which will include reasonable actions and reasonable steps to be undertaken by the local authority themselves and the applicant collectively, in order to try and prevent or relieve the person from, or the family from, homelessness. Okay, now a lot of our listeners have probably heard this, that this is a common question within the common people. Our council is saying we do not owe you a duty. So when will the prevention of duty apply, or how will it happen?
Yeah, that's right. Before I answer your question, actually, we're talking all about these topics, these new acts, and then the duties, and then the assessments, and you can really see that the government is working, by placing more duties and obligations on local authorities to prevent homelessness, or for people who are homeless or threatened with homelessness. Prevention duty. Housing authorities have a duty to take reasonable steps to help prevent any eligible person, regardless of priority need status, or intentionally homeless, or whether they have a local connection, who is threatened with homelessness from becoming homeless. You see, there are some words: intentionally, local connection. We will have further discussion on these words, actually. This means that either helping them to stay in their current accommodation, or helping them to find a new place to live before they actually become homeless. And this prevention duty continues for 56 days unless it's brought to an end by an event such as accommodation being secured for that person, or by their becoming homeless.
Right, okay. So, just in simple terms, the housing authorities, or your local authorities of an individual applicant, have a duty to take reasonable steps to help and prevent any eligible person that they owe a duty to, who is threatened with homelessness or is threatened of becoming homeless. This means either by helping them to stay in their current accommodation, or helping them find a new place to live before they actually become homeless. And you're saying the prevention duty continues for 56 days unless it is brought to an end by such an event, such as another accommodation was secured by the applicant or the individual or the family, or they actually became homeless. And
that's right. You see, you can really see this Housing Reduction Act 2017, extending the days from 28 days to 56 days. The purpose is for the councils to get involved at much earlier stage to prevent homelessness, or to make sure that people have a suitable accommodation, either at their present accommodation or another suitable accommodation, before they actually become homeless.
Right, okay. Mr. Qazi, we've literally got 5 minutes left, so I don't want to go into further topics now, because then we're not going to end. So if you could take us straight to the beginning of where we started, and in 5 minutes, I just want you to wrap everything up for me.
I really wanted to talk more, but unfortunately we are running out of time.
So if you could just give us...
my simple advice would be to our listeners that if you have any housing, or if you're homeless or you're threatened with homelessness, to approach your local authorities as soon as possible. The main legislation dealing with homelessness is the Part 7 of the Housing Act 1996.
Right.
The Act provides statutory or legal duties on councils, on local authorities, to prevent homelessness and provide assistance to people threatened with homelessness or actually homeless. In 2002, the government brought further amended legislation, the Homelessness Act 2002, and then we have the Homelessness Priority Need for Accommodation England Order 2002, to ensure a much wider approach to tackling and preventing homelessness, and also to regulate assistance available to people who are homeless or threatened with homelessness. And then we have further legislation, the Homelessness Reduction Act 2017. This particular act significantly reformed England's homelessness legislation by placing legal duties on authorities to intervene at much earlier stage to prevent homelessness or to those people who are homeless or threatened with homelessness. And then a new duty for those who are already homeless, so that housing authority will support households for 56 days to relieve their homelessness by helping them to secure a suitable accommodation. Then we went on about duty to refer this Homelessness Reduction Act 2017 introduced a duty on certain public authorities to refer service users who they think may be homeless or threatened with homelessness to a housing authority, and the service user must give consent and can even choose which authorities to be referred to.
Right.
And further to that, we say all local authorities do have these advisory services based on this piece of legislation.
They must provide
has a duty to provide advice and information about homelessness,
right,
and the prevention of homelessness, the rights of homeless people or those who are at risk of homeless, as well as the help that's available from housing authorities and how to access that help.
Okay, Mr. Qazi, thank you for giving us a brief summary of what we went through today. Dear listeners, thank you for tuning in today and listening to the show. Inshallah, me and Mr. Qazi will be back on the last Monday of November, and we will continue with this, and we'll finish this segment off. But as Mr. Qazi had explained earlier, that this isn't going to be your final segment. And on that note, thank you for tuning in. I'm your host, Mr. Mujeeb Rehman, and my guest today was Mr. Anwar Qazi. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Thank you for listening to our podcast. Why not tune in to our live stream at inspirefm.org and follow and subscribe to our social media platforms at Inspire FM Luton.